The entire courtroom freezes. Gasps ripple through the spectators, and even the bailiff's eyes widen in surprise. Judge Randolph blinks, momentarily thrown off, but quickly regains his smug demeanor. He chuckles, shaking his head as if amused. "Is this some kind of joke?" he scoffs. "You can't seriously expect me to believe a teenager is a licensed attorney." Maya remains unfazed. She calmly places her credentials on the bench. "Here's my bar certification, Your Honor. I assure you I'm very much qualified." The murmurs in the room grow louder. The prosecutor, a middle-aged man in a sleek suit, leans over to check the documents. His eyes widen slightly before he clears his throat and straightens his tie. "Your Honor, everything appears to be in order." Judge Randolph narrows his eyes. He wasn't expecting this. He expected some nervous, clueless girl stumbling over her words, not a confident young woman standing her ground. He snorts. "Well, I don't care how many certificates you wave around, young lady. This is a courtroom, not a classroom. Maybe you should be in school instead of playing dress-up as a lawyer." Laughter erupts from a few spectators. Maya doesn't flinch. "With all due respect, Your Honor," she says smoothly, "I graduated top of my class at Harvard Law. While most kids my age were studying for high school exams, I was passing the bar exam. So, if you're done underestimating me, I'd like to proceed with the case." The room falls into stunned silence. Judge Randolph grips the armrests of his chair, his smirk now completely gone. For the first time, he actually looks at her. Not as a child, not as some naive teenager, but as a real attorney standing before him, refusing to back down. He clears his throat, masking his unease with arrogance. "Fine, but don't expect any special treatment. Let's see if your so-called Harvard education actually holds up in my courtroom." Maya smiles. "That's all I ask, Your Honor." And just like that, the real battle begins. Maya takes a deep breath, steadying herself as the courtroom's whispers intensify. She knew this was coming, the doubt, the mockery, the disbelief. But she also knew something Judge Randolph didn't. She was ready for this moment. The judge flips through her certification with a dismissive scoff before slapping it onto his desk. "All right then, Counselor Carter," he says, his voice laced with condescension. "Let's see what a child genius can do." Maya meets his stare, her confidence unwavering. "Gladly, Your Honor." She turns to her client, a middle-aged black man, Mr. Harris, accused of burglary despite flimsy evidence. The prosecution's entire case rested on a single grainy surveillance clip and a biased eyewitness statement, both of which Maya had already picked apart in her research. The prosecutor smirks, clearly underestimating her as well. "Your Honor, if we're done entertaining this charade, I'd like to proceed with the case." Judge Randolph chuckles. "By all means, let's see if the young lawyer can keep up." Maya doesn't react. She simply steps forward and faces the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, my client is being accused of a crime he did not commit. The prosecution has failed to provide concrete evidence linking him to the crime scene, yet they insist on pushing this case forward." The judge interrupts, tapping his gavel impatiently. "Get to the point, Ms. Carter. I don't have time for speeches." Maya nods. "Of course, Your Honor." She turns toward the prosecution's key witness, an older white man who claimed to have seen her client at the scene. The man fidgets slightly under her gaze. "Mr. Dawson," Maya begins smoothly, "you said you saw my client near the jewelry store the night it was robbed, correct?" Dawson nods. "That's right. I saw him with my own 2 eyes." Maya steps closer. "At what time exactly did you see him?" Dawson hesitates. Around 10:30 p.m., I think." Maya flips through her notes, then looks up. "Are you aware that at 10:30 p.m. my client was on a city bus 30 miles from that location, and that we have bus camera footage to prove it?" The courtroom gasps. The prosecutor's smirk fades. Judge Randolph's amused expression twitches. "Is this true?" he asks, glaring at the prosecution. The prosecutor fumbles through his notes, his confidence cracking. "Your Honor, we weren't made aware of this footage." Maya interjects. "It was submitted in the pre-trial discovery. Either the prosecution didn't bother reviewing it, or they hoped you wouldn't notice." The courtroom ripples with murmurs. Judge Randolph's smirk is gone now. He leans forward, tapping his gavel. "Order." Maya steps back, her eyes locked on the judge's. "Still think I don't belong here, Your Honor?" The judge's jaw tightens. He clears his throat, adjusting his robe. "Proceed," he mutters, clearly rattled. The tide is shifting, and for the first time in his courtroom, Judge Randolph is starting to realize he underestimated the wrong woman. Maya steps closer to the witness stand, her confidence unwavering. She holds up the time-stamped security footage in one hand, making sure the entire courtroom can see it. "This footage," she says, her voice steady, "shows my client at a community center tutoring younger students at exactly 9:45 p.m. This is the same time you claim he was committing vandalism miles away. Can you explain this contradiction, officer?" The officer shifts uncomfortably, his gaze darting toward the prosecutor, who is suddenly busy flipping through his paperwork. I must have gotten the time wrong," the officer stammers. Maya raises an eyebrow. "That's quite the mistake. And yet, this mistake nearly destroyed my client's life." The courtroom murmurs. A few jurors exchange glances. The cracks in the prosecution's case are widening, and everyone sees it. Judge Randolph clears his throat, adjusting his robe. His usual arrogance is noticeably absent. "Let's proceed," he mutters. Maya nods, but she's not done. She turns to the prosecutor. "Your entire case is built on this officer's statement. Yet, the so-called eyewitness testimony just collapsed under scrutiny. Do you have any actual evidence placing my client at the scene of the crime?" The prosecutor hesitates, glancing at his notes. His face is pale now. We have circumstantial evidence?" Maya cuts him off, stepping forward. "Circumstantial? That's all? You arrested a teenager, slandered his name, and dragged him through this trial, with nothing but circumstantial evidence?" The prosecutor fumbles. "Well, the officer just admitted he was wrong," Maya interjects smoothly, "which means your entire case is built on a lie." Silence. The judge watches, his fingers steepled in front of him. The amused look he had earlier is completely gone. Now, there's something else in his eyes, a realization, a slow, growing respect. Maya takes a breath and turns to the jury. "This is how the system works against kids like my client. The assumption of guilt, the reliance on faulty evidence, the complete disregard for facts. But today, we're not letting that happen." A juror nods slightly. Maya turns to Judge Randolph. "Your Honor, I move to dismiss this case immediately. There is no credible evidence against my client." The judge exhales, rubbing his temple. For the first time in his courtroom, he's not in control. Maya stands tall, waiting, because she knows. She just won. As the final gavel strike echoes through the courtroom, a wave of relief washes over Maya's client and his family. His mother bursts into quiet sobs, gripping his hand tightly. Maya offers them a small but reassuring smile before gathering her documents, stacking them neatly in her worn-out briefcase. The spectators whisper among themselves, eyes flickering between the young attorney and the judge, who remains seated, staring at the desk in front of him, as if processing what just happened. The courtroom had been his domain for years, a place where his authority was unquestioned, his judgments final. Yet today, for the first time, he had been the one put in his place. Judge Randolph clears his throat, his voice softer than before. "Miss Carter, wait." Maya pauses, gripping the handle of her bag. The entire courtroom stills. She turns, meeting his gaze once more. His usual smirk is gone, replaced by something else, respect, maybe even regret. I underestimated you, he admits, his voice measured but sincere. That won't happen again. A ripple of shock moves through the room. The same judge who had mocked her, who had belittled her from the moment she walked in, was now acknowledging his mistake. Maya tilts her head, studying him. She could let him have the last word, accept his acknowledgement and walk away, but she isn't here for his validation. She lets a slow smile tug at her lips. Good, she replies evenly, because I'll be back. The statement carries weight. She will be back, not as an exception, not as someone who had to prove she belonged, but as an undeniable force. Judge Randolph gives her a small nod, one that isn't just acknowledgement, but perhaps an unspoken challenge. Maya turns on her heel and strides confidently out of the courtroom. Behind her, the spectators erupt into murmurs. The defendant's family clutches him tighter, and the prosecutor stares down at his notes in defeat. But none of that matters. Because as Maya steps into the hallway, the fluorescent lights above humming softly, she knows this is just the beginning. And next time, no one will dare to doubt her. The next morning, the world knows Maya Carter's name. News outlets run headline after headline, her face splashed across television screens and front pages. Social media erupts, clips of her courtroom performance going viral. Teenage prodigy lawyer humiliates racist judge in courtroom. Youngest black female attorney wins impossible case. Shocks legal world. Justice served. The attorney no one saw coming. Inside her small but growing office, Maya sits at her desk, her phone buzzing non-stop. She takes a sip of coffee, exhaustion lingering, but so does something stronger: determination. A call comes in. The number flashes across the screen. A well-known corporate law firm, one of the biggest in the country. She picks up, voice calm. Maya Carter speaking. The voice on the other end is polished, professional. Miss Carter, we saw what you did in court yesterday. Your skills are impressive. We'd love to have you join our firm. Maya raises an eyebrow, glancing at her desk, where an article about her victory sits beside her next case file. She leans back in her chair, smirking. Not interested. There's a pause. Excuse me? She taps her fingers lightly on the desk. I didn't fight my way into that courtroom to defend billionaires and corporations. I work for the people, not the powerful. A longer silence, then a forced chuckle. Well, if you change your mind, our doors are always open. Maya smiles as she ends the call, setting the phone down. She doesn't hesitate before reaching for the next case file. Because this isn't the peak of her journey, it's just the beginning. Some people chase power. She chooses justice.